when the clerk gives the signal, we will move on to the Urbana City Council meeting.
All right, we're ready.
I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council from Monday, November 8th, 2021. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Here.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Ms. Hersey,
Here.
Ms. Colasetti,
Here.
Ms. Bishop,
Here.
Ms. Wilkin, Ms. Wilkin,
Here, there's some background stuff. It's kind of hard to hear something in the back, but I'm here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Thank you.
Next up is approval of minutes from previous meetings of October 11th, 2021, October 25th, 2021, and the joint town hall meetings of October 28th and 29th of 2021. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Grace. Are there any substantive changes?
I would just say I sent some in already on email. I think people
Okay.
saw.
Yeah, that was related to the appointment of the city engineer and the staff present. Okay, any other changes? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is our additions to the agenda. Are there any additions to this agenda? All right. The next item is we will go into closed session for the purposes of property acquisition issues pursuant to 5 ILCS/2C5. And we will need a motion to go into closed session. I'll remind council to check your email for the Zoom link for the closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Move we go into closed session to discuss property acquisition issues pursuant to 5 ILCS 120-2C5.
Okay.
I'll second.
I'm sorry. Is that
Go ahead and
Mary?
give it to Sharice.
Sharice, okay. Moved by Chandra, seconded by Sharice. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin.
Yes. All right, please check your email and we'll go into closed session. And be sure to exit from this Zoom meeting, please. Okay, we're waiting for the clerk. Okay.
All right, I'm here.
Okay, great, Phyllis. All right, I would like a motion to come back into open session.
I'll move that we come back into open session.
Is there a second?
A second.
Moved by Mary Alice, second by Sharice. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans, Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colacetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin.
Yes, that motion passes. We'll move on to presentations and public input. The first presentation is youth programming and our social services staff report. Will Sheila Dodd and Braden Belcher.
Good
Mayor,
evening.
let's see if the slides
Tonight,
okay.
they look great, Braden.
Thank you.
Tonight, we're going to talk about our community consolidated social service funding and give you a little bit of background as well as our suggestions for this year. Next slide, please. This grants have been awarded to social service agencies since 1996. And in the past, we have consolidated funding with Cunningham Township, the City of Urbana's general fund, as well as Community Development Block Grant funding. This year, Cunningham Township decided to focus their funds on programs that that complement their services. So we have consolidated down to just the general fund and Community Development Block Grant funding. And so we have a total funding this year of $100,000. With all of the crime that's been going on, as well as direction from our Community Development Commission, we decided that youth services would be the best use of our funding this year. Several other agencies in town, including Champaign County Mental Health Board and United Way, are also funding programs, similar programs. Next slide, please. So through this grant, the City of Urbana seeks to fund programs that meet the needs of Urbana children and youth from early childhood through the age of 22. We're requesting proposals from agencies that should target those low-income families with the goal of having a lasting impact on the community. Next slide, please. We've received public input through our consolidated planning process, our annual action plan, as well as our Community Development Commission. Once we receive direction this evening, we will market this funding opportunity through our prior grantees, Human Services Council, Council of Service Providers to the Homeless, the United Way, the city's website, as well as persons who have called over the past few months showing interest in our grant funding. So our key services areas that we've identified are health, which would include healthcare, mental health resources, trauma support, wellness, such as recreation, after-school programs, violence prevention, education programming, mentoring, as well as workforce development and/or job training. Our suggested timeline is on Monday, November 15th. We will open up our application portal. On November 19th, we will have an application workshop Zoom meeting that will also be taped, so it'll be available by YouTube. December 17th, the completed applications are due at 4 p.m. through the portal or by noon if applicants are submitting paper applications. The internal team will review the applications the week of January 3rd through the 7th. On January 18th, staff will bring funding recommendations to council to review. On January 25th, we'll take those recommendations to the Community Development Commission for review. And then finally, contracts will be brought to the Committee of the Whole on February 7th. Agency eligibilities, they need to be a 501c3, or if they aren't a 501c3, they can be fiscally sponsored by one. The program cannot be supported by Urbana taxpayer dollars, such as park district type programs. A municipal entity, the city of Urbana, is bound by the Constitution of the state of Illinois. So we need to be careful about why we can fund religious programs. We can't require someone to participate in religious activities. And then agencies and programs shall not discriminate based on race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, criminal convictions, familial status, personal appearance, or any other protected class, as outlined by the City of Urbana Human Relations Ordinance. So applicants must have experience with federal, state, or local grant programs, as well as be in good standing with the state of Illinois. Our programs, we want to target Urbana children and youth. So if a program offers countywide services, this grant will be used to reimburse organizations for the number of Urbana residents served. And we currently are doing that with programs such as Meals on Wheels. We will reimburse for Urbana residents served. Grants will be prioritized to encourage partnership and cooperation among agencies. And this grant funding period is July 1 through June 30. So programs selected for this grant may be able to receive retroactive funding to July 1st. We'll use the following criteria for the application evaluations. And these are similar benchmarks, and scoring that we've used in prior years. So if a program serves at least one key service area, builds capacity for an existing organization and or program, leverages support for an existing organization and or program, the program has a proposed long-term impact on the community, the program's capacity to serve beyond this year's funding, proposed program increases services rather than replaces funding for services. The agency has clearly defined success measures to demonstrate program impact. The agency has previously received grant funding from the City of Urbana and has a strong performance track record. Proposed program collaborates with other agencies to leverage resource. And finally, diversity of board and staff. And all of this evaluation criteria, we will go over with the individuals during our technical assistance, as well as a part of our funding application. So technical assistance will be available from November 17th through December 16th. Our contact information is there. Typically what we've done in the past is we will start a list of frequently asked questions, and then people who are in the application process, we will send them to them periodically so that everybody gets the same information at the same time. Our training workshop will be on November 19th, and then we'll have the video of that workshop available for those who may not be able to attend the meeting. Our Youth Services Grant Review Team is Mary Alice Wu, Lamont Peppers, who's our Community Engagement Coordinator. He has a lot of experience with youth programs, Braden Belcher, and myself. So I guess we'd ask for feedback at this time. Any questions or comments on our proposed process?
Hello?
Go ahead, Grace.
Yeah.
And then
Thanks.
Grace.
Thanks for the presentation. I think the plan looks good so far. I was wondering if you had an idea of how many organizations or like what amount would be given, because I guess my only suggestion would be if we could make it more than splitting $100,000 between multiple organizations. So if you had any idea of how many organizations would be selected, and or if there was any ways or ideas of increasing that amount in the future.
This year, I don't know how we could increase the pot of money. We would have to look as we go into budgeting for next year on if we could add more general funds to the project. And typically in the past, agencies apply for what they need, and the grants have been anywhere from $4,000 to $25,000. So I think, letting them know the priorities up front, walking through the process, and then they'll tell us what their needs are, especially if they're using our funding to leverage other dollars. A lot of times that will help us stretch our dollars further. We don't want to be 100% funding of any program, but if they can use our funding to help apply for other grants, that helps them be able to serve more people.
Okay, go ahead, Sharice.
I just wanted to comment too about how important it is, especially for people that may not understand the application process. And one of the most important lessons that I learned when I was first on city council and having to go through this is it's extremely important that people who even think that they know what they're doing in filing for these grants go to do the meeting on how to fill out the grants, because not filling it out correctly can actually kind of put you out of the running for getting that grant. And so even if you think you don't need it, it's just very important that you still go and follow the instructions and follow how this application process has to go.
That's why we are opening the portal up for the online application on November 15th. And then when we have our training on the 19th, hopefully people will have had an opportunity to look at it and be able to ask questions.
Any other questions, Chandra?
Will there be like a graphic or a one-pager that we're able to share out to people?
Yes. Yep. I'll have Braden submit that to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
One thing I wanted to ask.
Sharice.
Yeah. Regarding the application for this, Sheila, is this only for programs that are located within the Urbana city limits, or can anybody put in an application for this? Anybody in the Champaign-Urbana area?
Anybody in the Champaign-Urbana area can put in an application, but their program has to serve Urbana residents. So for example, if Don Moyer Boys and Girls Club decides to apply, even though it's a county-wide program, we would want to reimburse them for the number of Urbana residents that they serve.
Any other questions for Sheila? And I'm sure you could email Sheila and Braden if you did have questions after today. Okay, great. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Braden.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Spread the word. All right, next presentation is presented by Council Members Wu and Colasetti, and it's the Voices of West Urbana petition.
Yes, so Jason, if you could promote CK Gonzalez, Lois, and Eric Sachs.
A little while ago, the West Urbana area decided to really take to heart the comprehensive plan and tried to communicate to the neighborhood what was going on and ways that people could provide input and so forth. And so they formed a group called Voices of West Urbana, VOW, and they put this together. So the first time I saw this was about 2 weeks ago when they asked me if I would be willing to support a presentation based on the findings that they've been able to gather. So we have Eric Sachs, Lois Steinberg, and Tina Gonzalez here tonight. And Jaya, thank you very much for being my second to get this on the agenda. I appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over to Eric so he can tell you more about it.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight our petition for protecting West Urbana. Voices of West Urbana is a grassroots organization of neighbors who spontaneously came together to discuss their concerns about West Urbana and to brainstorm solutions. Today, I will read our petition and then give a few brief comments. I'll be followed by Lois Steinberg, who will read selected comments from some of the more than 200 people who signed the petition. And lastly, Tina Gonzalez will speak in a more detail about a few of the solutions that we kindly ask you to consider. If I can share my screen, I'll share the petition with you. Let's see if I can do this. And I'll do that, and we'll go to here. There we go. So let me reorganize this just a tad. And the petition. So, we wish to join our neighbors to protect the livability of Urbana. We seek for the West Urbana neighborhood a future consistent with its unique residential character and small town feel, with its historic architecture and with its quiet tree-lined streets, mix of low density and medium density housing, and exceptional walkability and bikeability. Specifically, we urge the city of Urbana to renew its pledge from the 2005 comprehensive plan to promote healthy, balanced growth while preserving its community heritage, and to declare Lincoln Avenue as a strict border between campus, business, high-density residential on the west side and low to medium density residential on the east side, and to maintain the R1, R2, R3 low-density residential zoning between Lincoln, Vine, Maine, and Florida, to protect Urbana's oldest and most architecturally significant neighborhood, and to improve the planned unit development, PUD, process to better align with the city's and residents' goals and values, specifically to prevent PUDs from being upzoned to low density, from being used to upzone low density residential properties R1, R2, R3 in West Urbana, and to require PUD applicants to hold at least one open publicized meeting with the neighborhood to seek input on each proposed development and to incorporate public feedback into proposal revisions, and to require the scale and density of PUDs to be compatible with nearby existing structures. Large footprint complexes like the recently proposed but defeated PUD on Lincoln between Oregon and California are wrong for West Urbana. And adhere to existing design review guidelines for the Lincoln-Busey Corridor Overlay District and the Green Street Mixed Office Residential MOR zoning district, and incentivize the maintenance and improvements to West Urbana's older buildings. For example, give tax incentives to renovate properties similar to the Think Urbana tax breaks the city gives for building new houses. And to promote the rehabilitation of currently subdivided rental houses in West Urbana back to their intended use as single-family duplex properties, and to encourage use of Urbana's central business district as the most appropriate area for high-density, mixed-use business and residential development, not West Urbana. We will join with and support others similarly seeking to protect the character, public spaces, and tree canopies of their neighborhoods. And so in closing, I'd like to point out that this petition really has two types of statements. First, there are vision statements we would like included in the comprehensive plan. And secondly, there are specific requests to redress current problems with the PUD process. In recent years, planning the Planning Commission has been encouraging the use of PUDs to get around zoning. And this encourages land speculation that harms the neighborhood and discourages homeowners from investing in the maintenance and improvement of their properties. Strong guardrails against upzoning, if implemented, will discourage land speculation and return to the community a more level playing field. And thank you. I'd like to turn this over to Lois, if I may.
Yes, hi, thank you. I will read selected comments from signers of the petition. The steps outlined in this petition are necessary to support the health and sustainability of the West Urbana neighborhood and preserve a true gem in our city for families of all kinds to live in, invest in, and pass on to future generations. Desperately hope to protect the character and feel of my West Urbana neighborhood. I heartily agree, particularly with the intense development in Champaign and North in Urbana. We need to preserve neighborhoods as well as the vital core of what gives Urbana its rich character. Protecting the tree canopy and the historic homes of Urbana is the most important to me. This preserves the character of Urbana. West Urbana is a great neighborhood winner from the American Planning Association. I ask that the Planning Commission and the City Council to do no harm. We, the residents, have continued and maintained this neighborhood as a jewel for the city of Urbana. And the last comment is, West Urbana is an absolute gem. When I have visitors from other parts of the country, they are in awe of this neighborhood. Its huge trees, its distinctive houses and gardens, its cobblestone streets and street lamps. For the long-term well-being of Urbana, this neighborhood needs to be protected. I am so sad to see parts of historic Urbana already partially damaged through the building of large apartment houses over the ruins of historic Victorians. We can't continue that pattern. I think we all know better now. Thank you for your attention.
I'd like to close for our group. I'm CK Gonzalez. You all know me as Tina. CK is my legal name. Tina is what people call me. I'd like to close for our group by pointing out that our neighborhood is not the only one in Urbana under threat. You each represent wards and neighborhoods. We hope that in the comprehensive plan process, you will ask the city staff to work with neighborhoods across Urbana, each of which have separate individual interests and concerns. All the voices of all the neighborhoods should be heard in our planning processes, and the existing documents of Urbana should be examined and represented where they represent long-term planning and thought. So in Urbana, we have the current comprehensive plan, the downtown to campus plan, the MOR district, the Lincoln-Busey Corridor Design District, and you have organized people since the 1960s talking to you about the importance of this neighborhood. We're asking the council for considering two specific things for our neighborhoods and to also go out and seek the interests of all the neighborhoods in Urbana as you move forward with the planning process. Processes are really important right now, and we seek a commitment to you to maintain the R1 to R3 zoning in West Urbana, and our petition garnered more than 200 signatures in a very short time because people in this neighborhood are concerned about it. Hear the voices of this neighborhood and other neighborhoods as well. Second, we ask you to think about the process of the PUD ordinance. The PUD ordinance has become a concern of our neighborhood over and over through the process by which it is addressed through the city and what comes to us as a neighborhood. So there are three things about the PUD ordinance process that we ask you to look at. We ask you to prevent the circumvention of zoning by prohibiting R1 to R3 zone properties from being upzoned by the PUD process, circumventing the comprehensive plan and the planning for this neighborhood. We'd like you to create a requirement that the PUD process includes at least one public hearing with people who live in the area that will be affected. And we ask you, three, that you require that PUD scale and density be compatible with existing structures. We appreciate your service. We know that you represent neighborhoods all across the city. We know that in Urbana, over and over, people have said, They want wards for the city council. They want sub-districts for the school board. And that's because our neighborhoods are distinct. We're a relatively small city. We have the resources to listen to each of our neighborhoods. And we ask you to do that because we would like all the neighborhoods to be represented and served well by the city and its processes. We thank you very much for your service, and we hope that you appreciate as much as we do the wonderful place we all live. So thank you for your time this evening. Thank you to the council representatives who helped us get in front of you, and we stand ready to answer your questions, and we thank you again.
Diane, you're muted.
Any questions for our presenters? Chris?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. And you are absolutely right. West Urbana is one beautiful place, no doubt about it. My question is, some people listening to this, as well as reading the petition, might say, you're discriminating against low-income people and students. How would you respond to that?
I would say that this is already one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in Urbana, and I would tell you that it's also a place that, because there are older homes here that people can live in, it is also among the more affordable places if you want to live close to campus. The new apartments that are being built, those are not affordable housing. Those are mostly rented by students from fairly wealthy families. If you look at the rents for those families, the PUDs that are being built are not built for affordable housing. I have friends and neighbors who are living in this neighborhood because they can rent a place in one of the houses in this neighborhood. I think that if you compare across the city, the new developments are not adding to sustainable housing for increasing affordable housing.
Grace.
Thank you guys for the presentation. And I was wondering, maybe question for maybe on the city end and then you guys as well with the PUD public hearings. I was under the impression that we already have that. So first question is if that's the case, and if this is different because it's the applicant holding the hearing rather than the city, or does the city not hold those anyway?
I'd ask Kevin.
Oh, yeah, Kevin should answer that.
Are you there, Kevin? Kevin's our zoning.
I am here. Yeah. Let me start my video so you can all see me as well. So as part of the PUD process, we require a public hearing, which takes place at the Plan Commission. But I think what the neighborhood's asking for here is to have what we've been encouraging for at least the last 3 or 4 years is for PUD applicants and for applicants for other like larger rezonings and things to hold neighborhood meetings in advance of the Plan Commission hearing. Now it's not codified in any way. So it's really up to the applicant whether or not they want to hold those neighborhood meetings in advance. I mean, from the staff side, we strongly encourage them, especially for planned unit developments, which is all we can do according to the zoning ordinance. But we can, I think those meetings are usually very, very helpful. So I'm in favor of somehow we could either make that a requirement, or we can just be very, very firm in how we encourage applicants to hold those meetings. We do give a staff report for things like planned unit developments, and we could just say not support or not throw our support behind something if the applicant's not willing to make that step of having a neighborhood meeting. So I think we've got a couple options.
Thank you. And then my other question was for the presenters about your point of declaring Lincoln Avenue the border between campus business high density on the west and low to medium density on the east side. I was wondering if you mean across all of Urbana or to what extent? Because like east of Lincoln is most of Urbana, like our downtown is in there. I mean, how could we declare everything east of Urbana low density residential when that's the majority of the city? Like, is this historic West downtown Woona or all
Just
of
Woona,
Urbana?
just Woona. Yeah.
If you look at the Lincoln Busey corridor plan, we're asking for that to be respected, and also the zoning for our current neighborhood that's R1 to R3.
Yeah, so this was really focused on Woona, West Urbana as it's defined, and we listed the streets that border it in the petition. And just to follow up on Kevin's point, although the city often encourages developers to have a community meeting, many don't, and that's led to problems. So we feel strongly that it would be highly desirable for the city to require it, and furthermore to make it a obligation for the developer to actually respond substantially to the concerns of the neighborhood.
Mary Alice.
So I just wanted to let Grace, so the Lincoln Busey corridor is from out the southern part of Illinois to Pennsylvania, and then Lincoln and Busey. So it's just this little corridor down there. So it's not even north of that. And I also wanted to say something that Tina and Chris had talked about, which is affordability and student housing. West Urbana has a lot of student housing, and I don't think anybody in the neighborhood is advocating for us to remove student housing. I have 3 single-family residents on my block. The rest of it is student housing. We get along with one another, and it's nice. The other thing I'd like to say about West Urbana is we are not a cookie cutter. We don't have all 4-bedroom houses all the way down the line. We have some really small houses. Lowe's, I think your house is like 900 square feet, if I remember correctly. It's a teeny house. And then we have some really big houses. And so in terms of affordability, in terms of diversity, West Urbana does offer a lot of different kinds of housing for a lot of different kinds of incomes and also different kinds of people. So I guess what I would like to hear from City Council, I know that it is a process to update the zoning ordinance, which is where the PUD currently exists. And I am more than willing to talk with staff to figure out what does that plan look like if we wanted to move forward with updating part of that ordinance. But I don't know if City Council members want to email me and let me know if you're in support of that. I know that we have other things on our agenda, but that's kind of one of the ways forward that I see us going right now, is to look and see what that process is.
Jaya.
I had a question kind of related to the student housing question. I lived in West Urbana when I was an undergraduate student in one of those houses that's been divided up. Can you speak to kind of how that point relates to the last of the bullet points? So encouraging use of Urbana's, sorry, not the last one, promote the rehabilitation of current subdivided rental houses in West Urbana back to their intended use as single family or duplex properties. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so this gets back to the discussion that was going on a little while ago about R7s that was happening, which some of these fall under. And the concern is that there's less of a demand for those shared houses as there once was. And so what will be the fate of those houses? Will they just be torn down and turned into apartment buildings, or can they be repurposed? For example, could we use some HUD funds in concert with a community housing development organization to rehabilitate them and give them new life as houses for low-income people, for example. We also have a really strong co-op community here in West Urbana, and maybe there's opportunity for some of those co-ops to move into some of those houses that currently people say they can't rent to groups anymore. But we'd like to see the structures maintained and preserved, and the character of the neighborhood not altered greatly as a result of a transition that seems to be happening one way or the other.
Any other questions? So I guess you can provide feedback to Mary Alice regarding the PUD. Kevin, did you want to comment on any of the PUD issues?
Not so much other than to go along with what Mary Alice suggested, which is probably the way to do that would be to do a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. I mean, depending on how in depth we wanted to get, that could take, a short amount of time or a bit longer. I mean, if it's just a matter of inserting a couple lines that say, when applying for a PUD, you have to hold a neighborhood open house like 2 weeks in advance of the plan commission meeting or something like that. And that's just adding a line. So that could be relatively quick, but something more in depth, like I said, could take a bit longer.
Okay. Sharice.
Just very quickly, I wanted to thank CK for saying that all neighborhoods should have that opportunity. I know coming first on council, there was a PUD that was supposed to cross Champaign and Urbana and all this stuff, and there was a lot of pushback from my ward regarding that PUD, and they said that they had meetings, but when I actually spoke to them, and this was before I got on the city council, actually, I had spoken to a couple of the people that worked for that company, and I asked them, well, how many people showed up? And it was like 10 people, 20 people is what I was told. And which does not even, measure in percentage to how many folks would be living next to this POD and the PUD. So I appreciate you saying that every neighborhood should have that particular option, that we are told or we are asked our opinion of a particular development that may be going up close, and that can alleviate a lot of confusion because our expectations are not always going to coincide with what their expectations are, and they need to know that ahead of time as well. So if nothing else, just so that they can arrange it to meet our expectations. I think that's important. So thank you for that, CK. I appreciate that.
Okay. We have a lot yet to do tonight. So Jaya, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly thank the city staff. I know they held a meeting around our 7 conversations for WUNA, and would kind of, to piggyback off of what Sharice was just saying, hope to continue to see those conversations happen throughout the city. Ward 4 is unusual, and it has WUNA, and it also has quite a few different areas. And so I'd love to see those conversations happening throughout the ward and throughout the city, and thank the presenters again for bringing this to everyone's attention, and city staff for helping facilitate these conversations.
I will say that our staff who's working on the comp plan have been going to different neighborhoods, going door to door, actually surveying community members in neighborhoods around the city. And that's really helped to bring additional perspective to the comp plan. So that is happening in that way. Okay, thank you very much, Tina, Lois, and Eric. And you'll be hearing from us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will move on to public input. Let me get to my other list. If you'd wish to address the council, please raise your hand. First to speak is Jeff Ivasovich. I'll remind folks you have up to 4 minutes to speak.
Yes. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm a My name's Jeff Bostic.
Jeff, you've got some audio issues.
Operator out at the Landscape Recycling Center, Urbana. And can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. My name's Jeff Ivosovich, and I'm an operator out at the Landscape Recycling Center. And since the pandemic started, we were told that we were essential workers for that at that time. And we've been open since March of 20. And it's not really was a problem for us, except that we kind of felt like we were kind of ramrodded with our job right away coming into this pandemic with no type of PPD or anything like that available. Nobody was set up ready to be able to handle this situation, but we ended up figuring it out, and at this time we still remain open, even though the uncertain times. But we were looking for some kind of recognition or appropriation for our dedication to the city and our customers throughout the pandemic. Since then, we haven't, no one's said anything about us even being open or being any kind of appreciation for us being open at that time. We have hundreds of customers that come through the door during that pandemic, and we kind of took everything upon ourselves to do what we had to do to stay open. And, a little recognition or appreciation for the job that we've done out there would be greatly appreciated. At this time, we're in our bargaining contract negotiations, and we're asking for the city to step forward and work with us on this. I thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. You all have a good evening.
Thank you. Next up is Cale Beckwith.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, well, good evening. My name is Cale Beckwith. I have been employed by the city of Urbana for the past 9 years as a full-time arborist. I take a great deal of pride in my work and the responsibility of serving the citizens of Urbana. I am proud to work for the city and personally feel the city has always provided me with a healthy work environment. I'm here tonight to speak in support of a wage increase and safety improvements for parking enforcement staff, along with the general wage increase for all public works employees, to keep pace with the ever increasing cost of living. From plowing snow, patching roads, sweeping streets, to Operation the Landscape Recycling Center, Public Works employees provide vital services that the citizens of Urbana both expect and deserve. Public Works staff have been present every day throughout the pandemic to ensure that these critical city services were able to continue with minimal interruption. To conclude tonight, I'd like to thank the mayor and members of City Council for their commitment to public service and for the opportunity to speak here this evening. I also ask for your support as we work to come to a final contract agreement so we can continue to proudly serve the citizens of Urbana together. Once again, thank you for your time and stay healthy and safe. Good night.
Thank you. Next up is Dave Osterberg.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, my name is David Osterberg. I'm a traffic signal tech for the city of Urbana. I've worked for the city for 20 years this January. As a city employees, we come to work every day to make this a great place to live. I love my job and working in this community and work alongside dedicated people who keep this city beautiful, safe, and clean. In the electrical department, the electricians are understaffed by one electrician now, and we'll be short 2 electricians by this January. Plus, we are without an electrical supervisor. It is getting harder to fill these positions at the current wage, and being understaffed, it will be hard to complete all our job duties to keep all our citizens in Urbana safe and a great place for them to live. We also speak in support of our union members in the parking department. We need to lift them up to a fair wage. City council members and mayor, I urge you to find a way to honor our service to the city, that you come back to the bargaining table with a fair contract for us. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Have a good evening.
Okay. Next up is Jason Scott.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, council. My name is Jason Scott. I'm a longstanding employee of the City of Urbana Public Works Department and the president of AFSCME Local 1331. I've been an operator for the city for over 20 years, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of myself and my fellow members who are currently in contract negotiations with the city. As Public Works and city employees, we provide vital services for street, landscaping, parking, and the city building main desk. Excuse me. We provide these services even in the most challenging situations. Throughout the pandemic, our members came to work every day, answering the call of Urbana residents in need, working overnight to clear snow and ice from our streets, planting and servicing our rich landscape that makes Urbana a place our residents love to live, bringing in revenue to support city services and keep our community going. We are currently understaffed. It becomes harder every day to fill positions. We are facing a situation where we may not be able to recruit and retain the best for our departments. I would like to be able to retire from the city one day. We all want to build a career here, but we are looking at a contract that provides percentage increases that won't keep us ahead of minimum wage, won't keep us up with the historic increases to the cost of living. Our members want to continue to come to work every day, but we also have to be able to provide for our families. Our lowest paid members in the parking department shouldn't be making $3 less than the same position across town in Champaign. We know the city council values the labor that all essential workers at Urbana bring. We hear you when you say how committed you are to Urbana and its residents. At this stage in bargaining, we haven't seen a wage proposal that fully shows our value. So city council members and Mayor Marlin, we urge you to ensure the city return to the table with a fair offer that respects us and our contributions to this community. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Next up is David Guth.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is David Guth, and I'm a resident of Urbana and Ward 6 for the past 18 years. The sound of gunfire has become a semi-regular occurrence in our residential neighborhood. Not by choice, I have become keenly aware of public safety concerns in our community and schools after my son's incidents of violence and bullying in Urbana schools at age 11, to include threats of gun violence. However, my comment tonight is not about my family's experience, but to underscore the request of Councilperson Sharice Hersey, NAACP President Minnie Pearson, and Community Leader Linda Turnbull's request for increased safety measures in order to feel safe from retaliatory gun violence in their own homes and neighborhoods. Since my time is short, I will limit my comment tonight to a perceptive question recently asked in the November 5th, 2021 edition of Tom's Mailbag in the News Gazette. And the question reads, I noticed in the presentation of the Champaign Police Department's and Urbana Police Department's request to adopt automated license plate readers, both presentations only presented half of the problem. That is, of those incidents of shots fired and homicides the mailbag published last week, how many arrests have there been, and how many of the incidents of shots fired and homicides have gone unsolved? Per Champaign County State's Attorney Julia Reitz, the last complete review of shots fired reports from local police agencies was completed in July. Between Champaign Police Department, Urbana Police Department, Champaign County Sheriff's Office, and the University of Illinois Police Department, there have been 200 shots fired reports from January 1st, 2021 through June 1st, 2021, said Reitz. The state's attorney's office has received and reviewed reports in 25 of those cases. One of those 25 have been charged federally. 2 are pending further investigation. Criminal charges have been filed in the remaining 22. The other 175 remain under investigation and have not been sent to the state's attorney's office for charging due to lack of sufficient evidence and or lack of identification of a suspect, end quote. With 175 unsolved incidents of gun violence cases in the past year, at this rate, it is clear we are at a crisis level. I ask the council, are you truly listening to your constituents? And what is your immediate plan to meet the primary need for safety and security of your community? Thank you.
Next up is Teresa Michelson.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good evening, Council. Teresa Michelson, Urbana, Illinois. I had the opportunity to attend the groundbreaking for the Royer Hotel on October 28th. It was a great opportunity to see the beginning of the end of a very long process to restore that building to a tax-paying entity, one that will draw in other businesses and visitors to downtown Urbana. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Mayor Marlin and the dedicated city staff we are so fortunate to have, who worked so hard for this, and also previous city council members who helped bring this to fruition. There were 6 speakers at the groundbreaking, 2 connected with the hotel chain, 2 connected with the city, Mayor Marlin and Alice Novak. There were two other speakers, one from the Visit Champaign County organization and one from Champaign County Economic Development Corporation. These organizations were also on board with this project, helping the city in many ways. And then I realized these were the two organizations that this council on October 25th had decided on the spur of the moment to reduce by $5,000 each the amount that had been set as Urbana's contribution to their operating budgets. I find that wrong on so many levels. It seems to me extremely disrespectful of the work city staff had done and the planning that had gone into making that decision. It's fine to look at new organizations to which the city can contribute, but to make that decision based on not very much research, and from what I could tell, without really talking to anybody in the city about this. I find it very disheartening that individuals who did not know the history of these organizations and their work with the city over the years decided this. That's what it looked like to me. The idea to contribute to other organizations in this community going forward is fine, but to come in without having done research on the suggested organizations and just simply take away what had been promised is not the way to do business. Council members need to do their homework. Thank you again to Mayor Marlin and the city staff for all the things you are doing for the city, and especially the amazing work you did during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dennis Roberts.
Yep, my name is Dennis Roberts, and I live in East Urbana. I'd like to say hello to all the council members and the mayor. Tonight, I'd like to speak in support of the views that were expressed by the voices of West Urbana, who are presenting to council their concerns relating to the future development and possible proposed zoning changes in their neighborhood. It's a neighborhood where realtors have found one of the most desired addresses in the city. West Urbana's location adjacent to the U of I and the desire by developers to maximize this advantage have created conflict as new proposals for multifamily development threaten to erode the borders of the neighborhood. New development is possible and desired, but recently planned developments have run into problems getting approved because the developers are not meeting the basic requirements established to protect the property values of the homes already in existence and built there. The voices of West Urbana advocates have surveyed their neighbors and are presenting the petition, which they have just recently offered to the city council, with over 200 signatures of residents and like-minded citizens who support their concerns. As you formulate the new comprehensive plan for Urbana, I urge council members to retain the provisions of the Busey Corridor and the MOR district, which have established the protections requiring quality materials, stylistic compatibility, and appropriate footprint size that have helped make this neighborhood, quote, one of the 10 great neighborhoods in America, unquote, by the Illinois American Planning Association in 2007. As a council member, I remember the most current PUD that was offered to the city, which was rejected based on the overall size of the project and its lack of attention to the details of the MOR district and the overall design requirements. When asked what specific stylistic elements were incorporated into the planned PUD, which would match the neighborhood, the architect could actually name none. I thought that was an indication that real actual attention to the requirements had been poorly carried out and not included in the architectural plans. And these plans are useful to the community to maintain the appropriate quality, design, compatibility, and size of these proposed units. Now, I have other concerns regarding the 2022 comprehensive plan as it relates to the downtown. The downtown is the very heart of the community, and so far we haven't really heard much about the concept and the vision for it. The time constraints of the public input session does not allow me to begin that discussion here tonight, but I will be speaking to all of you in the future on that very important topic. Urbana has great potential, but we must recognize that our differences from surrounding communities are actually our unique strengths, and these must be clearly visualized, valued, and promoted. I thank you for your time tonight, and good luck with your work on City Council.
Thank you. Next up is Tequila Lucas.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tequila Lucas, and I work for the city of Urbana doing parking enforcement. I've been with the city. It'll be 6 years come January 4th. I am also a community. I am also a member of this community. So I know I enjoyed the work that we do doing parking enforcement. And I know the work that we do is valuable. I really enjoy the work that I do because working with people and dealing with the public, it makes me feel good. And I just love interacting with people. I also work 2 full 16-hour days, 5 days a week to be able to come to an agreement with a fair wage for parking and my other union members during this bargaining contract. So I ask you, Mayor and City Council, to help to come to a fair agreement for us where we can reach the living wage and be more comfortable and not have to work these 2 and 3 jobs just to survive. And we all enjoy working for the city. The city has been great by us. We just need to get a fair wage for us. Thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you. Next up is Alan Max Axelrod.
Hello. So this is Alan Max Axelrod, and contrary to some statements made by folks, I am a resident of Ward 3. When the City Council agrees with you, it doesn't matter where you live. When they disagree with you, you don't live in Ward 3. If you do live in Ward 3, then you don't hold the interests of Ward 3 in mind. I'm being very polite. I think that the discussion that was had via email is emblematic of the generational trauma at play in the conversation. You do not have traumatized people during traumatic episodes making planning decisions for vulnerable communities. You just don't. 200 petition signatures. That's not a lot. It's good. It's awesome. Let's assume that they're all on clipboards, right? We had collected over 400 petition signatures on an anti-poverty initiative. Now, there have been some questions about that anti-poverty initiative. How would you get a school that says they don't need the money? They got their second disbursement, by the way. There's no danger in them not getting that money. How would you have such an institution accept money? Easy. You have Urbana residents submit their enrollment to the city, and you cover their tuition, you cover their fees, you provide them a stipend. That's the demands, roughly speaking, of the Match the Mill campaign. Because let's reflect on a moment. What's the distribution of shootings relative to the income on the blocks that it happens? There was a speaker that said Ward 6 had a shooting. Ward 6 also has some really affordable apartment complexes. And the Housing insecurity brought about by low wages for people just trying to survive in those apartment complexes are probably related. So when it comes to this very nuanced issue, where I was not the only speaker from Ward 3 speaking out against those cameras, I think you need to look a little bit more. And I think maybe a presentation from the Match the Mill campaign is warranted, especially because we've gathered a lot of information. That all being said, the last time that I heard from ASME 1331 was when I was approaching the city at the request of my fellow workers at the Graduate Employees Organization during our 2018 strike. You don't see them around all that much. And that's a good thing. They don't have to be there to organize for their working conditions. Please treat them well. I wasn't treated well when I was speaking to you all as a GEO member. Don't create more me's if you don't like me. Also wanted to note in particular, thank you to both Charisse and CK. There's a lot of gentrification in Ward 3, so much so that the Center for Disease Control's life expectancy data set excludes a massive chunk of the western part of Ward 3. So we definitely do need those protections in this community, especially when there may be something going on with that quarry. I don't really know. Also, I wanted to say, child services that don't include transportation are going to be very limited. Make sure that it includes transportation that can be requested by the kids themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sarah B.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sarah Butler, and I am a parking enforcement officer for the City of Urbana. I have worked for the City of Urbana for 6 years as of February. And as a city employee, I come to work every day to make this a great place to live. I always go above and beyond my call of duty to make sure that I make a difference every day and that I represent the city in a positive manner. I really do value my job, and I have been a member of this community for over 30 years. I enjoy working in this community alongside many dedicated people who aid in keeping the city safe, clean, and beautiful. I am here today to speak about an increase in wages and the need for increased safety. As the cost of living continues to raise, it's becoming harder and harder to maintain the bare necessities with my current wages. As a result, I am currently working 18 to 20 hours, 7 days a week to support my family. I would love nothing more than to be able to work one job and utilize the rest of my day to spend quality time with my family. I also speak in support of the rest of my fellow union members. We do need to lift them up to fair wages as well. City Council members and Mayor, I am asking you to please find a way to honor our service to the city and that you come back to the bargaining table with a fair contract for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Nathan Sonnenschein. Sorry.
Hello, is my microphone working?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Marlin. So, good evening. My name is Nathan Sonnenschein, and I am speaking in support of the petition presented at today's meeting by Voices of West Urbana. I am a graduate student at the University of Illinois in the Library and Information Sciences program. I have lived in West Urbana since I moved to Champaign-Urbana 2 years ago, and I have been in love with the neighborhood since I moved here. Every day, when I walk to class or to work, I continue to be amazed by West Urbana's mature urban canopy and incredible variety of historic residential architecture. So many of my friends and classmates have spoken with me about how much they also love the neighborhood for the same reasons, and some of them even signed the petition online. West Urbana is the oldest neighborhood in the entire metropolitan area. However, we cannot take its historic integrity for granted. As Urbana considers updates to its comprehensive plan, I urge the city to reinstate its pledge to promote healthy, balanced growth while preserving community heritage. We can start by revising the PUD process to only allow new development that fits the scale of the existing urban fabric. We can recommit to design review guidelines meant to prohibit massive suburban style structures that interface with interior parking lots instead of activating the streetscape. And in the near future, we can incentivize maintenance and improvements to Urbana's oldest buildings, including those in the historic East Urbana and the North Side neighborhoods. Even as someone who is not a homeowner or a longtime resident of Urbana, I firmly believe that West Urbana is worth saving. The loss of the neighborhood's existing scale and fabric would mean that students like me could no longer enjoy West Urbana during our time at the university. As the city reconsiders Urbana's policies and priorities, it must view West Urbana as a neighborhood that can embody Urbana's community-oriented values for the benefits of all its residents, students and townies, renters and homeowners, children and the elderly. I look forward to future conversations about promoting walkability, bikeability, sustainable development, proximity to commercial services, low-income housing, landlord code enforcement, and functional public space, not only in West Urbana, but in every neighborhood in the city. I will conclude my comments. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Reverend Dr. Evelyn B. Underwood.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just getting ready to turn on my other phone because seemingly I thought maybe you couldn't see my hand. Quickly, I've got so much to say, but first of all, Ms. Michelson, her comments really made me think about this implicit racial bias. I wish I could go into detail about why I think so, but I would just like to say that. Plus, I would like to say systemic structural racism. When you don't want other, and most of them black and brown, I think in this case was just black, people to be a part of the system. More than those 6 people who spoke that they chose. I could have been one of the people chosen because I had a lot to do with the Royal Hotel and throughout, beginning at the Urbana Lincoln Hotel. So I would just like to say that, and I said me, it could have been a lot more people who looked like me, who were just community people. And finally, I better hurry. I talk about Miss Dodd and Brandon. Was it Brandon or Braden? But I heard Miss Dodd speak, Miss Sheila Dodd. We need to watch, make sure we watch what happens with this money. Over the years, I've sat there and watched and listened and see the results. And what I've seen is systemic structural racism, implicit bias. I wish I could be on that because some people are afraid to talk, afraid to let you know what the real deal is. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop with these comments tonight.
Thank you. Next up is Brandy.
Hi, my name is Brandy McCoy. I want to thank the City Council for deciding not to move forward with the LVRs at this time. I know we're all hurting from gun violence ringing out, and I look forward to trauma-informed social solutions proposed at meetings like these. These are what will bring an end to the gun violence that we're seeing. The fact that we have a large number of unsolved cases speaks to the poor relationship between community and police due to individual and systemic traumas, and there's no evidence that LPRs would make a notable difference in the safety of our community. What does is job training programs like SWIFT, homeless shelters, mental health services. None of these solutions need to involve the police. We can and should invest more wisely. I also want to lend my voice to city workers speaking tonight and advocate for fair compensation. The $3 difference between the lowest paid position in Urbana versus Champaign, cited by an earlier commenter, is an atrocity. That's horrible. So I just wanted to kind of echo them. They deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sarah Nixon. I'm sorry, Jay, have you got your hand up?
Oh, I have some to read, but feel free
to. Okay, Sarah Nixon.
Good evening, City Council. This is Sarah Nixon, and I would like to offer brief comment on some issues currently before the Council. First of all, the public input comment by David Guth this evening made it clear that the city's campaign to put up ALPR surveillance cameras in Urbana, to the extent that the general public is even aware of their plan, continues to be a campaign of misinformation. Mr. Guth, like so many other underinformed Urbana residents, erroneously believes the ALPR cameras will keep us safe, quote unquote. As well, I'd like to once again echo the point which Mr. Axelrod also made again this evening, that serious decisions should never be made or pushed through in the midst of crisis and panic thinking. Secondly, I read the memo for the discussion on procedures related to action items by council, and I want to thank those city council members who've been instrumental in calling out this Urbana administration for its evident attempts to deceive, manipulate, and exclude the city council and the constituency with regard to a seemingly very poorly conceived and poorly communicated so-called mental health crisis co-responder team that was presented as a pairing of police with mental health professionals who will respond to 911 calls, but which on closer look wasn't that at all and wasn't viable, and sought to dodge the process of public input and city council input. So thank you for respecting your constituents and for requiring that our government respect us and conduct our business with transparency and accountability. I am dismayed, however, that the discussion this evening was carried out in closed session. I would ask the council to please frankly explain to the public why we were shut out from the conversation. Was this exclusion imposed upon us by the mayor, by the city administrator? The memo authored by Ms. Colasetti and Ms. Bishop states plainly that the council and the city have a responsibility to serve the residents of Urbana in a participatory and transparent manner, and that the discussion scheduled for this evening is an opportunity to ensure a more collaborative process moving forward. By the way, I personally do think social workers following up during the ensuing days on during the days ensuing mental health crisis calls, and specifically domestic violence calls, is potentially a very helpful approach. I personally was phoned repeatedly by one extremely persistent female cop with the Société Policière de la Ville de Montréal, so the Montreal Police Department, who was determined to check in with me and talk with me further to a domestic violence incident that had terrorized me and that had involved a call to the police. I didn't want to talk with her because I wanted to get on with my life and slide back into denial that I was not living in a dangerously abusive relationship. But I finally answered one of her calls, and that female officer changed my life. She understood that I wanted to minimize and forgive the abuse, and that I wanted to pour my hopes into the dream that once our baby was born, he would surely stop the abuse. The female cop had some very real information to deliver to me. She told me point blank that in her 25 years of experience, the abuse never eases after a baby is born, but only worsens. She was right. It did continue to escalate. But at the time, I didn't want to believe that her prediction could apply to my situation. I was sure that we would be the exception. My point is that she was so real with me, and I deeply respected her perspective that came from longtime direct knowledge and experience. And I never forgot her concern and how blunt she was in delivering her message. I share that difficult anecdote because nothing is gained by keeping silent, and it illustrates well how one police officer profoundly opened my eyes can make a difference, tugging you out of denial into awareness of the truth.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to council members who had some communications to read aloud, starting with Jaya. We have about 20 minutes left in our public input hour.
Thank you. So just to reiterate, a lot of us have received many messages. I'm reading the ones that folks have asked me to read specifically. So I have 3 tonight. The first says, Dear Urbana City Council members, I would be with you on tonight's Zoom session to deliver these remarks if it were not for a previously scheduled commitment that I must honor. If possible, I would appreciate it if my council representative, Jaya Colasetti, would be willing to read my remarks into the record during the public input session on my behalf. I want to express my strong support for both the authors of the Voices of West Urbana petition and the more than 200 co-signers who quickly rose to support the sentiments in the petition. I want to begin by stating that, like most, if not all of the petition signers, I not only love living in Urbana, but I love living in the West Urbana neighborhood. I've been a very happy homeowner in Wuna for 44 years. And the reason that my wife and I selected this location to raise our family in was because it allowed me to walk or bike to work or campus, allowed my children to attend Leal School and play in Carl Park, and allowed our whole family to walk to shop in downtown Urbana. We love this city and particularly this neighborhood because it truly is a special place that is not easily found in other communities this size. So please hear this as a message coming from a loyal, longtime resident who deeply cares for preserving the special place that Wuna is. The reason I want to express my strong support for the petition is that over the past few years, it has not felt as though the city's support for maintaining this unique and vibrant neighborhood has been as strong or consistent as it used to be. When political candidates want to create an attractive video to support their campaign, they frequently shoot such messages in the Wuna neighborhood for good reason. But in recent comments from some members of the city's plan commission have seemed to denigrate those speaking out to maintain the current R1 through R3 zoning in West Urbana and to keep it enforce the spirit of the 2005 comprehensive plan. The Wuna neighborhood is a welcoming home to many types of residents and dwellings, but in some sense it is also a fragile environment that, if not properly supported through the right kind of zoning, could easily erode. As I gathered my thoughts for this letter Sunday night, I took a walk from my home on Indiana Avenue and traveled north up Ray Street to High Street, west on High to Busey, south on Busey to Indiana, and back home. Along the way, I was struck by the special beauty I saw as the sun was setting and took the following 5 photos that I hope will convey more than my words about why this neighborhood deserves the stewardship support that was envisioned in the 2005 comprehensive plan. In conclusion, thank you for considering these thoughts and for your service on council. Severely, Paul Hickson. The next one I have states, I oppose the purchase of automatic license plate readers and acoustic gunshot detectors by Urbana. The rise of gun violence in our community is indeed alarming, but the proposed technological surveillance measures won't adequately address the problem. Furthermore, these technologies are likely to be abused. Rather, the problem of gun violence should be addressed not as an excuse to beef up law enforcement, but should be treated seriously as a complex and vexing convergence of social problems requiring social solutions. Thank you, Mark Enslin. And then the other just briefly said that two of my constituents asked that I share that they are in favor of adding investigative tools such as ALPRs in addition to social supports.
Okay. James?
Yeah, I have one letter to read from Linda and John Miner, who are residents of Ward 7. The letter states as follows. Dear Urbana City Council, we support the use of automated license plate readers in our city. In past conversations about APLRs, Urbana City Council members have not fully appreciated the significance of retaliation as it relates to community violence. The fear of being retaliated against for helping solve a crime is paralyzing investigations, and the act of retaliation is real. APLRs are a tool that can take the burden off witnesses fearing retaliation. We have members of our community living in a constant state of hypervigilance with chronically elevated cortisol levels, paralyzed and unable to come before you, the City Council, for fear of retaliation for just speaking their preferences. Council is not acknowledging the voices of Black and Brown community members who desperately want the additional help of APLRs that will offer evidence while preventing retaliation upon them. We challenge council representatives to go knock on the doors in neighborhoods most impacted by gun violence and listen. This is not a rhetorical statement. We really mean it's time to go into the neighborhoods and listen one-to-one to the voices that actually live in and around this violence. If this sounds unpleasant, we beg you to reflect on why. It appears to us that the City Council doesn't think immediate action to gun violence occurring in neighborhoods is necessary as long as it's not happening in their neighborhood. Sincerely, John and Linda Miner, Ward 7. I will also mention, like Jaya, I'm getting a lot of emails on this, some in favor of ALPRs and some against it, but this was the only one that this week I was asked to read.
Okay, thank you. Mary Alice.
I think Grace had her hand up for me.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Grace.
Thank you. I've got two to read. Dear Mayor Marlin and members of the Urbana City Council, please consider the following statement regarding the use of ALPRs from Terry Tapple, City of Berkeley, California, councilman in District 2, who described himself as a working class Black man, community organizer, and social democrat. The City of Berkeley is also experiencing a gun violence crisis and recently experienced a shootout in a neighborhood park surrounded by small children. In response, Mr. Taplin shared his thoughts in the Berkeley Side nonprofit news on October 9th, 2021. And this is the excerpt. As I stood with my constituents in the park a few days later, listening to their stories of cowering in the park and hearing their frustration with the city's safety response in recent years, I wondered, are the needs and perspectives of the neighborhoods I represent being taken seriously? It is hard to answer this question in the affirmative when the response I get to any immediate public safety measures the City Council proposes is that my constituents should simply wait for the world to solve income inequality. Yet a speeding car or a gun can end those hopes and dreams in an instant. Imagining a better world is still an important task before us, but we also have to access possibilities that are feasible today. The City Council's mandate as public servants requires immediate action. We have a commitment not just to ensure a better world for future generations, but also right now. Some criticisms of several council proposals hold that rather than enforcing public safety more effectively with modern technology, we should be focusing instead on root causes of social unrest, systemic racism, poverty, inequality, and disinvestment. While I also work to address the interrelated social ills in my capacity as a council member, it's pretty clear focusing exclusively on the long-term visions is not adequate. We can and must do all of the above, protecting the safety of road users by holding drivers responsible for the social contract they sign up for when obtaining a license is hardly an intrusion into civil liberties. It is the bare minimum your public servants should be doing to uphold them. We do not yet live in a world where the rules establishing a peaceful society are imposed entirely by sheer altruism. Unfortunately, we do live in a city where lawless violence with cars and guns as weapons of choice has a disparate impact on Black and Brown communities and disinvested neighborhoods. If you can empathize with the generational trauma in Black community, it shouldn't be too hard to also empathize with Black people getting their cars stolen or hit or run over in crosswalks. Believe me, we're not fond of those indignities either. End quote. In closing, I urge the council to further their elected duties to listen and echo Councilman Taplin's question. Are the needs and perspective of the neighborhoods I represent being taken seriously? I urge the City Council to vote in favor of the proposed budget amendment to lease 20 automated license plate readers for the period of 1 year for all of the reasons described by Councilman Taplin's opinion piece above. Thank you for your service, Julia Girth, Urbana resident, Ward 6. And I have one more I was asked to read. Dear neighbor, I'm opposed to the purchase of ALPRs by both the city of Urbana and Champaign. I'm deeply concerned about the escalating gun violence in my community, and I'm concerned that ALPRs are a false solution and that purchasing them will divert resources into tools of surveillance instead of the resources and solutions we really need. We all want solutions to gun violence that heal and support our communities. We need to reject ALPRs and continue to work towards results-driven solutions that are equitable, not harmful. Instead, I urge you to fund programs that address the root causes of local gun violence, poverty, inequity, fear, and lack of opportunity. In spite of both cities' commitments to data-driven solutions, you are considering investing in surveillance when those resources are urgently needed for healing and preventing more gun violence, like First Followers' solutions-based approach to prevent gun violence that includes counseling, education, economic development, community outreach, and civic engagement. I urge you to consider the evidence against ALPRs and listen to the opposition to ALPRs growing in our community. Please read these important statements opposing by ALPRs by various groups. I think we've already read this one, Smile Politely, Champagne Showers, and join me in supporting safety and healing, not more surveillance and harm. And that was asked to read by Rita Connolly.
Mary Alice?
So a constituent sent me this and asked me to read it. Dear Mayor Marlin and members of the Urbana City Council, I have lived on Illinois Street for the past 14 years and in Urbana for the past 20. My spouse and I have 3 children who all attend public schools in Urbana, and we would like to continue to raise our children in this community. We are not sure if we will be able to stay in Urbana much longer. The increased gun violence should not be tolerated, and no one should have to get used to frequent drive-by shootings. Sadly, too many Champaign-Urbana families have to live in fear on a daily basis and do not have the ability to move out of their homes and neighborhoods. We recently experienced the effects of a drive-by shooting that occurred on Illinois Street, 2 houses away from us. I realize that this might be an isolated incident, but I no longer felt safe in my home and my neighborhood. I looked up the price of bullet-resistant glass, and it was not cheap. I resorted to moving furniture around my house to block windows, and I reevaluated where my children slept. I advised them to avoid walking in front of our house or sitting on our front porch. It is terribly sad that so many families in Urbana have lived with similar precautions in place and more for years. Is this acceptable to anyone on City Council? Are people supposed to get used to living in fear because they can't afford to move? Is a selective perception of privacy more important than possibly solving gun crimes? Does anyone on the City Council think that they know better than most affected by gun violence on a daily basis? Why aren't you listening and hearing the pleas from the petitioners who brought this request to you? ALPRs are urgently needed now. Ask yourself who has the time to wait for long-term solutions to take effect. I think it is safe to guess that those who have the time to wait do not live in the neighborhoods most affected by gun violence. Please respect the experience and the reality of those requesting the ALPRs and support them. Thank you for your time and service to our community. Sharon Foley.
Okay. Were there any other council members who needed to read?
I have something I wanted to read into the minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
Dear Urbana City Council, as an Urbana resident, I am writing to submit my support for ALPRs in our city. I have watched the crime rate soar and the blatant disregard to persons and property. Our streets do not feel safe. I would add that line 7 of the petition not only pertains to retaliatory shootings, but illicit drug interactions, random shootings, and other violent crimes against our innocent citizens at large. My family is one of the recent victims of random gun violence in the CU area. My 24-year-old son was simply going about his day in Champaign's Prospect Avenue shopping district on a busy, sunny Sunday afternoon. He was shot for no apparent reason other than he honked at a vehicle that had cut him off. He was shot in the head and has been fighting for his life in the ICU ever since. Unfortunately, there were no working traffic cameras at the scene, no license plate readers, nothing. I am convinced if ALPRs existed in our cities, the police would have already apprehended the perpetrators of this heinous crime. I am convinced this technology is cost effective, reduces human error and bias, and gives us a fighting chance to obtain crime information we otherwise would never get. I'm also convinced This is not an imposition on our civil liberties. This technology is not proposed for simple minor traffic enforcement issues and will not be used that way. Rather, it is a tool to help reduce and solve crimes. Our citizens deserve nothing less than this enabling technology to help keep our Urbana streets safe. Sincerely, Terry Von Thaten.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our public input for tonight. We'll move on to council input and communications. Any comments from council members? Shonda.
So I want to start by acknowledging the comments made by the city workers of Urbana. Jeff, Kale, David, Jason, Sarah, I hear you all, and I do
Excuse me, Chandra. It's imperative that when we are in the middle of contract negotiations, that council and elected officials do not comment publicly on anything related to the negotiations. We do plan to.
All I was going to say was I appreciate their work because Jeff specifically said that they weren't thanked. So.
Okay. All right. Just a general comment to the council as a whole. We will be giving you an update on contract negotiations next week. But go ahead.
Well, I'm done now. Thanks. So.
Okay. Thank you. Grace, go ahead.
Thank you. I was also going to thank the people who spoke today from the community and from the community who also work at the city. I guess I will say in general, I'll look forward to that conversation. And, from some of the last negotiations, I think and hope that we learned that the more communication, the earlier on, the better. So I will say that I look forward to that conversation and glad that it's happening and hope that we won't have a final contract with no options presented to us the first time we see it. And I will say that just generally, I appreciate and support our city employees. Thank you.
James.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to reiterate the two previous comments to thank our city employees for the work that they've been doing, particularly through the trials of the pandemic, and also for the public comment this evening and the public comment that I have been receiving via email. I do appreciate that so many people are becoming more engaged in the conversations that we're having. I do want to point out that both David and Julia Guth have reached out about this. David spoke earlier and Julia sent an email that I believe was the one that Grace received earlier. I want to ask if part of our rules of public comment, when someone starts, I don't know if attacking is the right word, but saying negative things about a previous commentator, I understood that we were going to be careful about the approach of public contributions and making sure that we keep people following our policies with regard to that. I also want to point out that for anyone who's attending the meeting and showed up after it started and only came in to find the message that we were in closed session, that closed session was to discuss a matter of property. And that is an approved closed session reason for the Urbana City Council to talk about things in closed session, because it is sensitive in nature and it is expressly provided for in the Open Meetings Act. So there was no discussion of any of the agenda items that was on our agenda tonight in that closed session, and an assumption of that would be incorrect. So thank you.
Jaya?
I'm going to sound a little repetitive here, but I think this is a good opportunity and a reminder that all of our city staff do deserve that credit and appreciation. This has been quite a time, and to be continuing to do that work for our community during the pandemic is definitely worthy of appreciation, not just today, but at any time. So good reminder that they deserve that. Thanks. I was going to echo what James already shared of the closed session today was about property. It was not related to the document that Councilmember Chandra and a number of other council members and I worked on to try to get clarity around how we're having these conversations moving forward. So just to provide that clarification that that's a discussion for us to continue to think about how best we can all work together. And hopefully we will have time to talk about that during the committee of the whole meeting later this evening. I also wanted to just take a moment to speak a little bit about the conversation about ALPRs. I know that it's frustrating when things don't move quickly. I know when this conversation first came up back in September, I wanted this to be an easy solution, to be perfectly frank. We had a drive-by shooting about 4 houses down from where I live. There was a homicide about 2 blocks away from where I live. When we look at those heat maps, I live in one of those areas with a lot of action, with a lot of the red that you'll see on those heat maps. So I understand that there's a need for prompt action. I know what it's like to be afraid when you hear those sounds. We do hear them regularly in East Urbana as well. And so I hear that. I know that this is an important conversation for us to be having. I'd also echo what has been shared of it's really meaningful to continue to hear from our community members, whether it's by email, whether it's at the town halls, whether it's in these meetings. I encourage folks to continue to express their opinion as we move forward to try to figure out ways that we can create a safer community for all of us.
And I believe Mary Alice.
Like everybody else, I wanted to say thank you to all the different kinds of people that came out today and have been emailing us. We don't always hear from a variety of people. And I think tonight's public input really showed the diversity of things that are concerning of our city members and our city staff. And I do think that it deserves a call out in terms of all the city staff that do the work that we don't see, that we take for granted. Our streets are plowed, our leaves are picked up, our the lights are working. There's lots and lots of work and lots of people who are very dedicated to their jobs. So I really appreciate that. And I was really happy to hear them come out today and tell us what they did and what they like working here. I also wanted to thank just members of my neighborhood. There was that petition was both electronic and signed. They went door to door with a clipboard and they ended up with 200 signatures and they talked to people trying to get and understand what their thoughts were on the neighborhood. And I really appreciate all the people who organized that to allow the community to have a voice, the voice of West Urbana. So that's it for tonight.
Okay, any other council members? Chris and then Cherise. And Jason, we have Lois Steinberg should not be a panelist at this time. So she should be moved back into the attendee list. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. I just really, real quick, wanted to acknowledge the city employees that gave public input tonight. Thank you very much. You are appreciated, and we'll definitely be hearing what you have to say. I also want to thank the other public inputters who are giving input on other issues, the petition for West Urbana and the LPRs. It's very appreciated. I want to tell those folks that are interested in the LPRs that there is going to be another sort of public town hall at Poor Brothers in downtown Champaign, November 15th at 6 p.m. And there'll be a discussion about what we're going to do about gun violence in Champaign-Urbana, November 15th, 6 p.m. at Poor Brothers. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I guess what I want to say too is, of course, thank you to all the staff members. I especially want to thank Dave Estroff. I hope I said the name correctly. I met him while he was fixing the lights that went out in my subdivision and over by King's School just a couple of weeks ago, and he was doing this by himself. And he was just very he informed me, educated me on how all of this stuff worked, you know. But I really appreciated the work that he did and how soon everything got right back up over that weekend. The other thing I wanted to do was say this regarding the issues that we've been having with the ALPRs. And I'm going to read something. And in Urbana, the Black community continues to face desperate outcomes and traffic stops. And whereas repercussions of this history and current practice run deep, community social, educational, and economic outcomes for non-whites all suffer from the physical and psychological consequences of racism. And these outcomes sustain themselves long after the original sins and sinners perish. And whereas the effects of racism are still profoundly felt today in Urbana, it affects the health and wealth of individuals in the entire community, having been declared by the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District to be a public health crisis. It will not be overcome without a concerted and sustained effort by all. By all. So when I think about what I have to deal with, or what people want to talk about their privacy, what I think about more than anything else is privacy that's already been invaded by bullet. What I think about also is that people who are thinking about their invasion, you're not willing to put your toe in the swimming pool that we've been swimming in for a long time. And that's all we're basically asking you to do. When effort by all does not just mean the Black community has to be brought up into your way of thinking. Sometimes you need to experience just a little bit of what we're having to deal with on a daily basis. And I hope you take that to heart and think about it as a concerted effort by all.
Okay. Any other council members wish to comment? Okay. All righty. We will move on to unfinished business. There is none. Reports of standing committees. Chandra.
On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I recommend approval of ordinance number 2021-10-046, an ordinance authorizing sale of city-owned real estate, 1407 Wiley Drive, 809 South Glover, and 1811 East Florida Avenue.
Is
I'll
there a
second.
Any discussion? Mary Alice.
I wanted to thank Scott for all of his work on this, and I appreciate the updated ordinance that we have in front of us, and I'm in full support of this.
Any other council member comments? Jail.
I just want to reiterate again, still hoping to see that the one on Wiley ends up going to some good use to support members of Ward 4.
Okay. Any other comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
No.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes 6-1. That concludes, thank you, Chandra. That concludes the reports of the standing committees, reports of special committees. We have none. Reports of officers. Carol?
Just two things quickly. Just a reminder that I believe this has been communicated out to folks that on December 2nd and 3rd will be your council goal setting, priority setting sessions from 5:30 to 7:30. And I know that our facilitator is going to have some advanced work for you to do, and we'll send that out, a week or two in advance for you. And then on the Equity and Quality of Life Project next Tuesday at BPAC, we will be presenting the communications plan for that. And then we'll be ready to roll that out, and we'll be looking for your assistance in spreading the word. That's it. Thanks.
Grace.
Yes. Carol, I was just wondering that I missed that last part. You were sharing the equals presentation where, when?
At BPAC, 7 o'clock on Tuesday on Zoom. The information, the Zoom information is online. But that's I've been vetting things with BPAC and getting feedback from them. So this will be the communications plan for rolling out the application process for the Equity and Quality of Life projects.
And is BPAC is the bicycle and pedestrian safety thing, or that's a different thing?
No, that's it.
BPAC?
Yeah, they've been helping. They've been helping be a sounding board for it and giving me feedback because it's about safety. The projects are ultimately about safety, and they are focused on safety, but it's, we're asking them to think a little bit more broadly about safety. And again, these are going to be infrastructure projects, relatively small size infrastructure projects. We're targeting things that are $250,000 and smaller.
Okay, I thought it was focused on equity is the main part of the name. I understand safety can, they're not mutually exclusive by any means, but I thought that the equity was more the main goal there.
The idea is that there's a scoring system that we came up with, and the scoring system heavily weights underserved communities, underserved neighborhoods in the scoring process. So, and then the idea is the projects themselves are supposed to be addressing safety issues in underserved areas. So if there's like missing sidewalk or sidewalk ramps or trying to think of streetlights. Yeah, streetlights was another big one. So it is, the equity piece is about making those investments in a more equitable way. So that's why we're giving a lot of extra points. I mean, it's very heavily weighted towards underserved areas.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
And I would add BPAC has spent, almost from the time they were formed as a board, focused on neighborhood connectivity, neighborhood safety, and currently also in Vision Zero, which is looking at pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and improving neighborhood safety. So it's all connected, but it's infrastructure focused. Okay, any other officer reports? All right, we'll move on to new business, which is ordinance number 2021-11-047, which is an ordinance approving a major variance accessory parking at 1005 Philo Road, ZBA case number 2021-MAJ-07. And Kat Trotter is here to present this.
Diane,
Yes.
I'm wondering if you would entertain a motion to extend the meeting because it's 7 minutes left. We might as well make sure that, should we extend it to 10:45?
Whoa, it's a good thing I've been looking at the wall clock and not the computer clock, so thank you for that. Sure, would you like a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we extend the meeting to 10:45.
Okay,
I'll second.
who was the second? Jaya? Okay. Can you call the roll real fast, Phyllis?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin. Did she say something? Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Okay.
All right,
Mr. Quisenberry, I got it.
Yes.
okay, go ahead, Kat.
Thank you, guys. I'm gonna share my screen. All right. This is a request by Robert Weiss for a major variance to allow an accessory parking space in the required 25-foot front yard at 1005 Philo Road. Staff received 2 letters of public input regarding this case, one in favor and one in opposition to the variance. Both were included in your packet. And at the October 19th, 2021 meeting, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted unanimously to forward this case to City Council with a recommendation of approval with 2 conditions detailed in the staff report. This is a location map of the property. It is located on the south side of Washington Street. South of Washington Street on the west side of Philo Road. The applicant purchased the property in 2017. The house spans the width of the lot with narrow side yards of roughly 5 feet on the southeast side and 6 feet on the northeast side. There is an attached 1-car garage and 9-foot wide access drive that provide a maximum of 2 parking spaces on the lot. Variance would allow the applicant to pave an accessory parking area in the required front yard to create additional space for parking and also a turnaround space so that he can turn around before pulling out onto Philo Road. At this point in time, it is a major safety concern for the applicant. This is a zoning map of the property. It is zoned R3 single and 2-family residential. The adjacent properties to the west and south are zoned R3, and to the north and east are zoned B3. Nearby are other residences. Family Dollar and Boomerang's Bar and Grill are across the street. This is a site photo of the property. The applicant would like to widen and pave his existing access drive to 18 feet from Philo Road to the property line, and then pave an additional 18-foot wide accessory parking space in that area. The request is slightly different now than it was at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Originally, the request was just to pave the 9-foot wide access drive. But since the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, Bob has found it more reasonable to ask for a wider access drive. That way he can pull into the accessory parking space as opposed to having to, back out onto the grass in his yard. Staff thinks that this is a reasonable request given the variance request that was considered at the Zoning Board of Appeals. The revised request is still consistent with the major variance application, and it complies with the zoning ordinance requirements for access drives as well. Another site photo. Mr. Weiss has a difficult time backing out of his access drive onto Philo Road as it is now. And the accessory parking area would allow space for him to turn around before pulling out onto the street. The applicant does not have access to his rear or side yards on the property, so the front yard is the only reasonable space for accessory parking. Accessory parking spaces are not permitted in required front yards, so the variance is required. For reference, a similar variance was approved in 2015 to allow an accessory parking space in the required front yard. This is a graphic showing the existing access drive and then the proposed parking area. So you can see in purple where that space would be widened at the street and also on his private property. The accessory parking area would be paved from the front property line and encroach 25 feet into the 25-foot required front yard. The access drive and parking area would be approximately 5 feet from the south property line and 26 feet 6 inches from the northwest property line. So it should not cause a nuisance to either of his adjacent neighbors. This is an oblique view of the block on Philo. 11 of the 16 properties on the block have access to either the rear or the side yard, and 10 of those 16 properties have parking in either that rear or side yard. Of the 5 properties that do not have access to the rear or side yard, 3 of them have legally non-conforming accessory parking in the required front yard. So legally non-conforming in this case, meaning that no variance was applied for and that the accessory parking has been on the property for longer than our zoning ordinance would have prohibited it for. And this is a photo of those properties. You can see where the access drive has been expanded towards the property lines. In this case, both of these are gravel. So as I said, 1005 Philo Road is one of only 5 properties along the block that does not have access to the rear or side yard, which significantly limits the possible locations for accessory parking. The accessory parking area would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood and would improve safety for the property owners, as they would be able to turn around before pulling onto Philo Road. Another photo of accessory parking in the front yard. Staff found that the application meets the requirements for the requested variance. Additionally, engineering and building committee have both reviewed the requests and have no objections to the accessory parking area, given that the right-of-way permit will be applied for and the access drive, apron, and driveway will comply with city right-of-way standards. This is a recommendation or a recommended condition of approval as well. There's no access to either the rear or the side yards. The 1-car garage and narrow driveway limit on-site parking to only 2 spaces, and there's no on-street parking along Philo. Allowing for an accessory parking space in the required front yard will provide more on-site parking for the applicant and create a turnaround space for drivers so that they do not have to back out onto a busy street. If there were access to the rear or side yard, the accessory parking could easily be paved there and no variance would be required. Again, here's a site plan just to give you the dimensions again. The variance will not serve as a special privilege to the property owner, as there's no other area on the lot where accessory parking could go. The variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or create a nuisance to adjacent property owners. Additionally, one of the neighbors has written a letter of support for the variance. The variance represents the minimum deviation from the requirements of the zoning ordinance, and there are no other possible locations for the accessory parking space around. The city council has the following options in this case: approve the ordinance with certain terms and conditions, or deny the ordinance. At the October 19th, 2021 meeting, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted unanimously with 4 ayes and 0 nays to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation of approval with 2 conditions. I've put them on the screen for simplicity, but they're also in your packet. The first being that the accessory parking space will generally conform to the submitted site plan as shown in Ordinance Attachment A. It's also Exhibit C in your packet. And that the access drive, apron, and driveway will be paved with an approved surface and meets City of Urbana right-of-way standards subject to Public Works approval. Staff concurs with the ZBA recommendation. And I just want to say that Bob was not able to come to the meeting tonight via Zoom because he does not have the facilities set up at his home to join with a video camera, and he did not feel comfortable joining over the phone. If there are any questions or any things that you would like to hear of specifically from the applicant, I can arrange for him to be at the next city council meeting, but I can take any technical questions for staff. And I'm very familiar with the case, so I can speak on his behalf as well.
Thank you, Kat. Any questions? James?
Yeah, I believe he came and spoke to us while we were in session, so I recall that event. So I don't need to see him here tonight to support this.
Any other questions? Jaya?
I was just going to reinforce, yes, he has been present, and I've been out to see the property as well. He's been very engaged in the process.
Grace, you have a comment? Question?
Yes, both.
Questions first.
Okay, yes. I was looking for the other public comment in the packet. I see the one email opposed, but I didn't see the one in favor that you mentioned.
Should be the handwritten letter. It looks like it was handwritten. The two, one follows the other, and yeah, they were probably not labeled as public input, but that was the only other one received.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Yeah, I thought that was the describing the photo on the other side. And then what about how the sidewalk is there? Is this going to be like up all the way up to the sidewalk? And if you just explain any thoughts or safety things on that?
Sure. So when he applies for the right-of-way permit, Adam Shaw will be, and engineering in general, will review the right-of-way permit for compliance with all of our right-of-way standards. There is no specific requirement for the sidewalk to be brought up to a higher standard than what it is already. However, if any of the sidewalk is damaged during the concrete laying, it will need to be repaired. There are also right-of-way standards as to depth of concrete and width and things like that. So Bob will comply with those regulations when he applies for the right-of-way permit. And that will be subject to Public Works approval.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Alice.
So you said that it would be approved surface. Does that mean concrete or asphalt? Or those? What are the other options?
Yes, concrete or asphalt are both considered approved surfaces by the zoning ordinance. He is planning on doing concrete. As of now, he has gravel. We would not allow him to expand the gravel into his front yard as a parking space. But as far as his plans go, he'll do concrete. There's a list of other approved surfaces. You can do like interlocking pavers, things like that. But as far as I know, he is planning on just poured concrete.
And so the difference between what was presented at the Zoning Board of Appeals and what is being presented today is the width of the driveway entrance. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the driveway entrance would go from 9 feet to 18. Is that right?
Yes. So instead of it being a one-car entrance off of Philo Road up to the property line, he'll widen it from 9 to 18, so wider than it is now. When staff considered that request to widen it further, the rationale was that it makes more sense to be able to pull alongside the cars parked on the accessory parking space, as opposed to having to, maneuver your way probably in the grass around those cars on the accessory parking space.
So I don't have an issue with widening the driveway from 9 to 18. I was curious about, I think that the, is it 27 feet? I can't remember what the feet is to extend it beyond the driveway. Let me see if I can read this better. I'm just wondering if it is going to be parallel to one another. So the driveway entrance, the parking in front of the house, is that going to be over more? It is over more. So was there a consideration in terms of just making that straight up so that it would be 18 feet instead of 27? Was that under consideration?
So like a 2-lane drive through,
right,
instead of going to 27 feet on the private property.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was some consideration. And to be honest, when Bob and I had talked initially, he had wanted to pave even further. I think he wanted to do 35. 27 feet represents 45% of the lot width, which is what would be allowed for an access drive as defined by the zoning ordinance. and prior to us considering the 18-foot wide access drive and the 27-foot wide parking space, it made sense for him to have that 9-foot strip and then a parking space next to that. That's a good question. I think, you know, to your point, having 18 feet straight up would have, or essentially be as effective as having an 18-foot strip and then that additional 9 feet. Although I think his desire, you know, from the homeowner's perspective was to line it up with the side of the porch on his house where it is concrete there. So I think that's where the 27-foot mark hits right now. So
said the extra 7 feet is not going to give you an extra parking space, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in this case, you could probably pull some of them in and have them be parallel to the house and then be able to pull cars in and out behind those. A standard parking space, at least by the zoning ordinance, is between like 8.5 and 9.5 feet. So you could probably park like 2 or 3 cars parallel to the house and then pull cars behind so that cars could pull in and out onto Philo. But another, you know, the big motivating factor for asking for a variance here was that turnaround space. So having a spot for him to pull into and then back out of to pull forward onto Philo Road is really the safety concern and motivator here.
Hey, Chris.
Do you know if he's going to hire a commercial contractor to pour the concrete, or is he going to do it himself?
My understanding is that he will be hiring someone. I think he would love to have done it himself. He is definitely a handy guy, but I think he's planning on hiring a contractor.
Any other questions for Kat? Can we get a motion on the floor then? To put the item on the floor.
I would move ordinance number 2021-11-047, an ordinance approving a major variance accessory parking at 1005 Philo Road, ZBA case number 2021 AMAJ07 for approval.
Second.
Okay, moved by Jaya, seconded by James. Discussion. Jaya.
I was going to just elaborate. I mentioned that I had the chance to meet with Mr. Ways, a while back. You know, he did come when we were in person and requested an opportunity to speak about his plans. He was very thorough in what he had planned, and I, having pulled into his driveway and then backed out, can definitely see what the safety concerns are there on Philo. So definitely in support of his application.
Further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin. I didn't hear her. Did she answer me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that motion passes. And concludes the business at the council meeting. With no further business, I will call this meeting adjourned.